Humans on the cardboard. Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today, I've got a top 5 list for you. Now that we're into December, it's kind of nice to look back on the entire year of 2022, especially since there's not really much going on. We just got the Dark World structure deck, so there's really not a ton going on for the rest of the year as far as Yu-Gi-Oh! Products go. So we can go ahead and make a top 5 list here. Today, we're doing the top 5 most impactful products of 2022. I open this to products because there are some products that aren't sets that can still be really impactful, structure decks, etc. And so I still left that open a little bit. You'll see when we get there what I'm talking about. But yeah, really excited on this one. I thought this was a pretty good year for Yu-Gi-Oh! Products. Weren't a ton of duds. There were some things that weren't as good as we may have hoped them to be, but like still ended up being, something for somebody. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get into it with some honorable mentions. We'll start off with the first honorable mention here, Dimension Force. For me, nothing too crazy. And also keep in mind, when I say impactful, I'm talking more about how much it affected the metagame in the TCG, more so than I'm talking about anything else. I'm not talking about, oh, this is a great investment. You probably made hella money if you bought a ton of these sealed. None of that stuff. I don't really care about that stuff as much. I'm talking about how much the new cards in these sets affected the metagame as a whole. So Dimension Force didn't have a ton. It had a couple of interesting things. Therion we saw played a little bit pretty much prior to Tier. No, we saw it a little bit with Tier. No, it was more before Tier, I guess. And then like Bestials are kind of annoying for this. The Ishizu fairies are really annoying for this this archetype to deal with, and it could be a little bricky at times. But we saw a couple of cool decks get some nice tops with it, and then mostly like the Scareclaw engine was the other like big thing here. We saw that played with Tier as a really cool engine to make Curious and stuff, but outside of that, we haven't seen much else from this set really make too much impact on the format. Moving on to the other honorable mention, this might be a surprise to a lot of people, but I actually have Magnificent Mavens at number 6, just outside of the top 5. My whole reasoning for this is like literally the only thing in this entire set that actually is like affecting the metagame is just the Ishizu fairies, right? The Witchcrafter support not doing anything, Sky Striker support not doing anything, aside from like the locals levels maybe, and then same thing with like Mayakashi. So it's literally just the Ishizu fairies. I know they've been very impactful, but if it's the only thing that you can put like from this set towards like a list of how impactful it's been towards the format, it kind of loses out to sets that might have multiple avenues of how it affected the format overall. Plus, it's an engine. It's not a full-on deck. Nobody's playing full-on Ishizu, and so that also detracts from it for me as well. So let's move into it with number 5 on the list officially, Tactical Masters. And usually you won't see deck build packs on these kinds of lists, at least not super high or in super high frequency. But Runic was here, and Runic's really the lead man on this set here, which is really cool. It's so splashable. It's seen splash in like multiple different decks. It's a really, really powerful engine. I would say right this format versus Ishizu Fairies, it has an awkward matchup. It really doesn't love the matchup there, which is annoying. But aside from that, pretty much until exactly Ishizu Fairies dropped, this like, what was it? Sprite Runic looked like the best deck in the game, and was like very, very high topping. It's an engine that as soon as like Ishizu Fairies or just Tier maybe gets hit on the next ban list, I think Runic could be right back up there as like a super high level threat deck again. Other than that, Valence is pretty poop. But I do think Labyrinth is something to note here. I didn't put it in here quite as high, but it's the only reason really I marked it up higher than Magnificent Mavens was because I think you could put like Runic and the Ishizu Fairies kind of neck and neck. The Ishizu Fairies have a better matchup versus Runic, but as far as like their splashability, I think Runic's more splashable, but it's the stuff that's been splashing the Ishizu Fairies has just been better matchup-wise versus Runic, so it looks like it's just straight up better. I don't necessarily agree with that entirely, but I think it's important to note for Labyrinth that yet it has not been crazy, but if we see another ban list early into 2023 that like limits Tier Shizu, and then like we get the new trap card in Photon Hypernova, I do think this will be like a deck that's actually worth keeping an eye on. It could legit end up being like a tier 2 deck down the line. So that factored in a little bit, not a ton though. Moving on to number 4, Structure Deck Albaz Strike. This is one of the best structure decks we've had in a while, for sure. I don't remember the last really good structure deck we had prior to this one, to be honest. But this one is a banger. It's a certified banger, making this archetype super, super affordable, aside from like needing Albaz and stuff. But as far as like this engine, the Despia engine, without needing the the branded engine without needing the Despia stuff, super, super affordable. And not only that, this was the best deck in the game for a good little bit. It is still a like high level rogue deck. I would put this in like tier 2 because you can also play it with like tier variants and stuff, and it has really good synergy with like Bestials and stuff. It's one of the better decks to like play with Bestials. And on top of that, it's been played as like a splashable engine in certain decks. So because it's been an engine that's splashable in other decks, because it's been its own deck that was the best deck in the game for a couple of months, I have a lot of respect for this product. I love it when Konami releases banger structure decks. I think Trap Trick is going to be a good one as well. It's not going to be quite as good. Like, Trap Tricks aren't going to be like the best deck in the game, but as far as what it is, I think it's going to be a pretty solid structure deck there. But yeah, all things considered, this is a definite certified banger of a product. There's not much else to say, though. All right, into number 3 on the list, Grand Creators. Yeah, 2 deck build packs in the top 5. It's kind of crazy, hard to believe. But yeah, you have to have Grand Creators high on your list. And I'll be honest, when Grand Creators came out, I was actually pretty low on it. I was like, Punk looks like a bad Prank Kids. And it did. And then E-Telly went to 3. And then we got Deer Note. And then we got the Field Spell. And like Chaotic Ruler, the Chaos Ruler Dragon was like insane. And the deck was crazy. Exorcisters. I thought Exorcisters were like one of the worst archetypes Konami had released in a minute. And then they gave us Magnifica. And then they gave us Malfa. And the deck is still probably like arguably a tier 2 deck. Maybe a lot of that's because it can play Shifter. But they made an archetype that can play Shifter. That's like competent enough. And that's enough in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! So that archetype won a entire YCS and is like still to this day like arguably a tier 2 deck. And I thought that was crap at the beginning of the year. And then also obviously the adventure package, which I absolutely was way too low on when it was coming out. I was low on this product as a whole, and that's a big whiff on me. I didn't realize how splashable the adventure engine was going to be. Still hasn't had a hit to this day, so I do think should we get a ban list that like hits a little bit of Sprite, hits a little bit of tier, and brings down the ceiling of those decks, we could absolutely see the resurgence of adventure decks back into the game, especially since they never really had enough time to shine and actually get hit on the ban list. It's pretty cool. All right, moving on to number 2. It's Darkwing Blast. I think there's an argument to put Grand Creators over Darkwing Blast. I'll throw that out there, but core sets obviously have like the leg up when it comes to being the most impactful set of the year, just because it's a 100 card set. There's so many. Like a deck build pack just has 3 new archetypes, and that's it for new cards. Side sets have like at most 50 new cards, and it's usually like like anime imported cards a lot of the time. So like it's just not, you know what I mean? It's not all the way there. As far as, you know, as good a chance. It really has to be a banger. But yeah, Darkwing Blast. I think the biggest thing here is Kshatriya Law, the beginning of that, as well as, not Blackwings, I just read Blackwings, Bestials. Bestials and Kashtira, huge. Absolutely, absolutely huge. There's other cool things you could throw out there, like Draco Slayers come up a little bit here. The Naturia cards are in here. So even some high-level rogue stuff definitely was in here. Sprint was in here. Wallow, Zelantis, Muckracker. There are even some generic cards that aren't like triple tactics talents droplets level generic, but for like an entire category of, you know, all Fiend decks. Now I'll just have Muckracker going forward. There's some really cool options in here as well. So definitely a really good set. Probably like an 8 out of 10 if I had to rank it, but yeah, very, very impactful. Still good, mostly on generic stuff, but also you could throw in, you know, Kashtira is going to be a full-on deck next format. It's just a splashable engine right now, but it's going to be a full-on, like, really good deck next format. So you have to throw that in there as well, which of course takes us number 1. It is not even close in my opinion. The most impactful set of the year is Power of the Elements. Not close. There's no way you could argue it in my opinion. This set has sprites and the debut of sprites as well as the debut of Tearlaments. And even, throw Vernisylph in there. Vernisylph is a very coherent strategy that combines with like Naturia in situations, just mentioned them, as well as Madolche. 2 pretty solid, high-level rogue decks right now. For bonus stuff, you also had Exosister Martha, 1 OICS. Mathematics Circular was in there. Rika Princess, the new Rika support was in there. So when Rika won that YCS as well, that's another one you could throw out there. There really are some really good stuff in this set. The Punk Field Spell, that also took them to the next level. Scareclaw got their Link 1. That was huge for them. There's really just bangers all over this set. Garuro was a TCG import. Honestly, phenomenal. So yeah, there's not much else to say. Ultimate Slayer was also in here. I know that hasn't seen a ton of play, but yeah. The 2 best decks in the game, and have been ever since this card got released. So pretty much for 5 months straight, the 2 best decks in the game essentially debuted in the same exact set. We very rarely see multiple Tier 1 decks debut in the same set. That's very, very rare. Normally it's like you'll get 1 and then maybe another archetype or 2, but they're okay at best. But yeah, they really went all in. We knew when this set was coming out that it was going to be a huge, huge shift in Yu-Gi-Oh! And it absolutely was. I think we can all agree that Sprite and Tier have pretty much cemented themselves as the strongest engine decks we've ever seen. They have power crept and created a new standard, gold standard for what the best engines in the game should look like. So yeah, it's got to be Power of the Elements. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today, guys. That's my list there. Honestly, the rest of the sets, not that great. The honorable mentions really were it. There's not a ton of other great sets this year, in my opinion. But yeah, all things considered, this is my list. Let me know your thoughts down below if you think I should switch anything around. Keep in mind, we're talking about impact on the TCG format as a whole, not as much, anything financially or otherwise on that. But I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more top 5 videos talking about all of 2022 as a whole or otherwise. I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.